What's up guys, XHOUNDISHx here, and today Bungie announced that Destiny's update 2.3.0 is scheduled to deploy tomorrow, which will be the 14th of June, and the following is a preview of how it will impact weapon balance. There will be weapon balance changes and class balance changes, quite a lot, and we're going to break them down in this video. Any other things that may coincide with E3, considering this update is interestingly timed, we'll find out about later. But for now, the balancing changes are as follows. So hand cannons, it's our intention to reduce the necessity of rolling range perks on hand cannons in order for them to be considered usable. However, we also do not want to return to a world where hand cannons can contest scout rifles at long range. So the changes will be increased initial accuracy and decreased accuracy drop for low range hand cannons. They've made damage fall off curves steeper to better coincide with the intended effective range of hand cannons, and there's been a small increase to PvE damage to all hand cannons. The amount will depend on the enemy class. So essentially what they want to make hand cannons do is be more reliable all round and be less reliant on certain bonuses to perform well, but try and still keep them in line so that they're not in the place that they were in year one. So this definitely sounds pretty promising overall. In terms of auto rifles, they had this to say: Doctrine of Passing, Soul Stealer's Claw, Arminius D. These names strike fear into our opponents' hearts, not only due to their quick time to kill, but also the amount of screen shake or ping that they inflict on their targets. The family of high rate of fire auto rifles currently leads the pack as the most used, and so we will nudge them lower once again. So the change is going to be a 6% damage reduction for the high rate of fire autos. That's, Doctrine, Soul Stealers, and all of that. So this definitely sounds promising. A 6% change definitely won't kill the weapon, in my opinion, but certainly should bring it, into line, make it a little bit less obnoxious in general. Bungie also spoke about the ammo economy. Essentially, there's a timer for how long it takes for the game to refill your ammo from ammo dropped kind of around you. What they're going to do is automatically grab ammo after a shorter time when you're running low. So this should mean that you have kind of less ammo problems in most of those PvE encounters. We also have a change to Hawk Moon. With the recent hand cannon improvements, the Hawk was flying a bit too high. A minor stability reduction brings it back into line, but may encourage a re-examination of one's barrel selection. So there's going to be a slight reduction to Hawk Moon stability by -5. What they're talking about with the barrel selection is, how much stability, the kind of ballistics that you're using on the weapon. You may want to think about, again, this is not necessarily something that I saw coming. I mean, it can be a very solid weapon. This is pretty interesting. Nonetheless, I don't think it's going to cause too many problems. It sounds pretty reasonable to me. Counterbalance. So there are some cases where a perk's effectiveness makes it seem like an absolute necessity to run. For many players, this is currently true for counterbalance. Not only is it extremely effective, but it nullifies the uniqueness of each gun's recoil pattern. We hope these changes will let the personality of each gun shine through a bit more. So there's going to be a slight reduction to counterbalance effectiveness. They're going to reduce 80% of the recoil angle instead of 90 that it was previously. So this isn't a super massive change, but it definitely means counterbalance, is a bit less of a big deal to have on certain weapons. They have some bug fixes, so fixed an incorrect UI bar on the Red Spectre. That will be the impact stat, so no gameplay changes, just the impact stat will now display correctly. Fixed exotic machine gun stability, where some weapons were ignoring their own base stats for recoil, so that's a Thunderlord super good advice. And then we have fixed Defiance of Yasmin to correctly adjust the zoom for snipers introduced in update 2.2, and they've increased the inventory stat by 10 to compensate. So Defiance of Yasmin finally gets that change. They also spoke about Rangefinder and what Rangefinder does as a bonus, and they also spoke about what weapon handling actually means. I will leave in the link in the description if you want to check that stuff out. But let's talk about the class balancing. And I'm just going to go over all of the changes because there are quite a few across the board, but Bungie kind of stressed that they felt the Hunter needed some changes overall, so there's a lot for the Hunters. So the changes to Gunslinger are that the Swarm Grenade has an increased arming radius of 0.5 meters, so essentially it will be easier for that to start tracking targets. They've also had a damage increase of 7%, which is pretty decent. I feel like this definitely can make Swarm Grenades more viable and popular in PvP. Trip mine grenades no longer attach to enemies, instead they arm on impact and then bounce. You can't stick people with trip mines anymore. Trip mine damage has also been reduced by 3%. 30%. Moving on to Golden Gun, Bungie stressed that Golden Gun was feeling a bit lackluster in terms of damage, so the base damage of Golden Gun has been increased by 50% and an additional 30% against AI combatants. Now that is a very big change and a very welcome change. It's going to make it a lot more viable in PvE as well, which is certainly very nice. We also have a Deadeye change, so Deadeye now increases Golden Gun damage by an additional 30%. In terms of throwing knives, they essentially said that they were causing a little bit too much frustration with certain setups in particular, so throwing knives base damage has been reduced by 10%, Circle of Life has been modified in terms of functionality, so precision kills with throwing knife reduce the cooldown of Golden Gun, Circle of Life will no longer extend the duration of Golden Gun, Circle of Life has had the +1 armor removed. In terms of perk selection in the subclass, a few changes. So Scavenger increased the amount of grenade and melee energy awarded by 33%. Chain of Woe has had the +1 recovery added, and Over the Horizon has had +1 recovery removed. Moving on to Blade Dancer, Bungie have essentially said that the blink capability is a little bit too advantageous in some situations, so now blink will incur a -1 recovery penalty, and blink strike lunge distance has been decreased by 0.4 meters. So on the whole, they've made them a little bit less mobile and a little bit less strong while you're blinking. Blink strike, so backstab valid backstab angle has been reduced by 30 degrees. Essentially, you need to be more behind the target now. Escape artist invisibility effect has been delayed by 0.5 seconds, so it won't apply as quickly, and fast twitch recharge has been reduced by 20%. So across the board, what they've essentially done is slowed them down. They said that Arcblade itself has a number of changes in this patch, so base duration increased by 2 seconds, which is definitely good. Hit and search range increased by 0.5 meters. They've added a 0.8 second cooldown between Arcblade swings while airborne. Energy costs per swing has been increased by 20%. Energy cross on hit decreased by 20%. So essentially, if you're more accurate, you'll have more kind of capability with that super, whereas if you just kind of sweep after people, it won't be as good. They also spoke about Arcblade's effectiveness in PvE, so Arcblade damage has been increased by 30%. Vanish now causes the player to vanish on cast in addition to its normal functionality. Showstopper damage radius has been extended by 1 meter. Encore, while killing an enemy with Arcblade, now extends its duration and grants a 150% increase to Arcblade damage for a short time. These are definitely good changes for Arcblade on the whole. So for the Nighstalker, we saw some grenade changes. Spike grenade damage impulses per second reduced from 5 to 10. Spike grenade damage per impulse increased by 100%. Total damage has been unchanged. Essentially what they wanted to do is make them a little bit more, reliable and actually work more effectively and more popular. There's been a change to Shadow Shot in that it now applies the suppression effect on impact, so you'll no longer see a delay between when your tether hits the ground or hits the target and them actually becoming tethered. This is definitely good. So many times, you hit that tether and then die before you can actually apply any other damage. Said that they wanted to change the smoke ability and make it less frustrating to its victims. So the impact damage has been increased by 34%, impact suppression and damage over time duration reduced by 1 second. Jump suppression has been removed from the initial impact status effects, base smoke cloud duration increased by 1 second, envenomed cloud duration increased by 1 second, envenomed jump suppression removed from cloud status effects, vanish in smoke +1 agility removed, snare cloud duration has been increased by 1 second. So essentially it's just a general balancing to the kind of smokes and Shadow Shot on the whole in terms of what this subclass is actually doing. Overall, I think this is some good stuff. It makes the smokes less offensive, but the Nightstalker kind of Shadow Shot itself much more viable. Been a number of changes to the perks in the Nightstalker subclass, essentially to make certain bonuses, more appealing. So Courage of the Pack now increases recovery, armor and agility by 2 per stack. Courage of the Pack now stacks 3 times. Lockdown increases smoke duration by 2 seconds plus 2 additional seconds with the snare upgrade. Predator now reduces the cooldown of Shadow Shot ability, and Shade Step moved to a single dodge on a 3-second cooldown. So overall, they've just kind of tried to make the class more balanced. That Shade Step change is quite major. The other stuff is mostly about kind of promoting other things in the subclass. In terms of other class changes, we heard that Twilight Garrison has moved the Tactical Air Support ability to a single dodge on a 3-second cooldown, so you won't be able to dodge as much with Twilight Garrison anymore. In terms of super damage, Hammer of Soul damage has been increased by 10% against AI combatants, so that's PvE. Fist of Havoc base damage has been increased by 50% and an additional 50% against AI combatants. Nova Bomb base damage has been increased by 50% and an additional 50% against AIs again. Storm Trance damage increased by 10% against AI combatants. So some pretty interesting changes, very big buffs on the Fist of Havoc and Nova Bomb in particular. Hammer of Soul definitely sounds like a good change for PvE, and Storm Trance as well for PvE will be really nice. Next are some changes to Sunbreakers to make them a little bit better overall. So Hammer of Soul hammer travel speed has been increased by 1.3%, and Hammer of Soul's hammer detonation radius increased by 10%. So it's kind of pushing it back towards where it was before. It won't be obviously that strong, but it's definitely some good changes in general. Next, Sunsingers. So they essentially said that they've been keeping an eye since the previous patch on what Sunsingers are doing. So Firebolts increased arming time of 0.2 seconds. So essentially Firebolts won't tag you as quickly, so there's more of an opportunity to actually escape from them. Next, Firebolt decreased victim search radius by 1 meter, so they won't tag as far anymore. Next, Viking Funeral. So Viking Funeral no longer extends the duration of ignite effects. Viking Funeral now weakens targets afflicted with the ignite effects, causing them to take 5% more damage from all sources, stacking up to 3 times. So essentially they've made it that the grenade won't kill you as easily, but obviously if you're in a gunfight, having a weakened target will be very beneficial. So this looks like the Viking Funeral change that we kind of wanted. It's pushed into, you know, that kind of territory. Next, Flame Shield. So we added a minor delay to the activation time of Flame Shield. Flame Shield will have a 0.3 second delay added before the Overshield activation. So essentially, your Flame Shield will take a little bit of time to come up, won't be as effective. Once again, these changes are pretty interesting for the Warlock. I do feel like overall the Warlock changes are pretty good. We'll have to see how Viking Funeral and Firebolts feel, but of course the Firebolts won't be tagging you as easily, so Viking Funeral won't be, you know, quite as much of a problem on the whole. There you go, guys, a whole bunch of changes to weapons and class balancing. There's quite a lot of stuff there, some very interesting stuff, and we'll get to see how that plays out tomorrow. But let me know down below what you think of all of these changes and how they might affect you in the game. If the video has been useful, a like is always appreciated, and if you're new to the channel, feel free to hit subscribe for a lot more Destiny content. But for now, you guys have an awesome day.